There's a portrait in an old bungalow, hanging quietly near the upstairs washroom. Everyone who walks past it fills its eyes, watching, waiting. But what if the portrait is more than just paint on canvas? What if it's alive? Every time someone in that house needed to use the bathroom, they had to walk past the portrait. At first it was just a painting, but after a few weeks, people started noticing something strange. Disclaimer: the events described are based on reported experiences shared by witnesses online. Names, locations, and certain details have been changed for privacy and storytelling purposes. This story took place in the late 2000s. A woman named Marissa had just purchased a beautiful 3-floor bungalow on the edge of a quiet neighborhood. The house wasn't ancient, it was around 35 years old, but something about the place carried a strange heaviness. The upper floor contained 3 bedrooms and a shared washroom at the end of the hallway. And directly outside that washroom door was the wall where everything would begin. Marissa had always loved antique furniture, old cabinets, carved wooden tables, vintage chairs. But the last item she purchased was different, an antique portrait of a woman. The frame was carved from dark wood with intricate patterns. The woman in the painting had pale skin, dark hair, and calm, emotionless eyes. When the portrait was delivered, the movers hung it in the upstairs hallway, right outside the bathroom, which meant anyone in the house would have to walk past her. One evening, Marissa's nephew, Timothy, was visiting the house. While walking down the upstairs hallway, something strange caught his attention. As he passed the portrait, his reflection inside the glass looked delayed. For a split second, it appeared as if another figure had walked behind him. When Timothy turned around, the hallway was completely empty. A few nights later, Timothy stood near the hallway mirror while brushing his teeth. The antique portrait hung just behind him. At first, everything looked normal, but then an unsettling feeling crept over him. The woman inside the portrait seemed to be moving, copying his movements, not reflecting him, imitating him. Within a few weeks, strange disturbances inside the house began to grow. Late one night, loud sounds occurred from the hallway and living room. Doors opened and closed loudly. Furniture moved. Timothy and 2 younger relatives hid themselves inside one of the upstairs bedrooms, while something outside sounded unusual. When the noise finally stopped, the group cautiously stepped into the hallway. The living room downstairs was in complete chaos. Furniture overturned. Objects scattered everywhere. But Timothy remembered something far more disturbing. Earlier that night, when he looked at the portrait, the woman inside the painting wasn't alone. Behind her stood 3 shadowy figures, women wearing dark veils, all staring directly outward. The house had an occasional caretaker who visited once or twice a month to clean the property while Marissa traveled for work. Over time, she began noticing strange things: the refrigerator door opening by itself, lights turning on and off. At first she tried to ignore it, but eventually the disturbances became harder to explain. One evening, while preparing food in the kitchen, the caretaker placed something on the counter. Moments later, she watched it slowly rise into the air. Terrified, she ran out of the house and refused to stay there alone again. After hearing about the growing disturbances, Marissa called a priest to bless the house. At first, the blessing seemed normal. Prayers were spoken, holy water was sprinkled. But when the priest reached the hallway and began praying near the portrait, something extraordinary happened. A powerful gust of wind burst through the hallway. Objects flew across the room. The blessing was immediately stopped. Later, a paranormal investigator was brought in to examine the house. Her conclusion was disturbing. The portrait appeared to be cursed, and whatever entity was attached to it had spread its influence to other objects inside the house. Paranormal researchers often believe that certain objects can act as anchors for spiritual entities. Old antiques sometimes carry long histories, and sometimes something far darker. In this case, the portrait may not have simply been haunted, it may have been a doorway. Stories like this raise several unsettling questions. Not every antique object carries unusual history. When multiple witnesses experience the same events, coincidence becomes harder to explain. And sometimes the most hauntings aren't connected to locations, they're with objects. Do you believe objects can carry spiritual attachments? What would you do if something strange started happening around an antique in your home? And if you had to walk past that portrait every night, would you leave it hanging there? If you enjoy stories like this, subscribe for more unexplained mysteries.